Outcast. I'm your host, HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And today it's time for a big episode, or as big as you can get,
Mm.
considering the subject matter, because we are talking about the legendary heavyweight king of the monsters, Godzilla, or Gojira in Japanese. So,
So big it took us 4 weeks to do.
yeah,
It's
this took us
totally
a
been
while to get
preparing.
to.
We've totally been preparing this entire time.
Yeah, totally, totally. But just to make sure we're getting this out right off the bat, you can also probably see by the title, we are only going to focus on the Showa era of Godzilla movies, which is the first 50 movies. We can't do all of them in just one go. It's not possible. It's not feasible.
Unless you
So
want like a 5 or 6 hour cast, I suppose.
yeah, but for the sake of our mental stability. We are gonna do this, in parts. We we may not be able to do all of the eras in a row, but let's start with the very first era of Godzilla, the Showa era. But since this is the introduction, Wolf, what is your experience with Godzilla prior to this?
Prior to this, I watched that one movie, Godzilla movie that everyone loves.
Which one is it?
The one where Godzilla has babies.
Oh no, that's not Godzilla. That's Zilla.
No, that's the Godzilla movie everyone loves, right? That's the Godzilla that
Nope.
everyone knows and loves, and everyone enjoys that version. It's way better than whatever this thing we're talking about is.
Okay, we are finishing it here because I need to go kill Wolf. Thank you for coming, but no. We're not talking about that.
But
We're
no,
not
that's
talking about
that's the only before this. That's the only Godzilla movie I had ever really watched, other than like the new stuff. I've seen a bit of that, but like any of the older stuff, zero experience with. I think other than that movie, I might have had a bit of experience with. Like I knew of Godzilla, I knew what he was. Big kaiju monster. Don't fuck with me, right? I knew that, and I think I might have played a game or two with him in it before
it.
that, but other than that, like very little experience to be honest. Other than like just knowing what he is and of him and all that.
Okay, that's fair. As to my experience, for the longest time, I knew what he was.
Mhm.
I knew what he was, and then I never really checked a movie out until after I saw the Angry Video Game Nerd, where review of all the Godzilla games. This one, this was awesome, and and then I just saw his reviews on the entire series, and I was like, hey, this actually looks cool. I need to check those out, and I did, and been a fan ever since.
Hmm, cool.
Which is why I decided, yeah, let's do this now. But yeah, we're here now. So thoughts about this era that you've just experienced for the first time.
Yeah, for it's worth pointing out, right? Like all these movies, if I'm not mistaken, came out in the 1960s, 1970s, right? Like that's the like
Um,
the
the first one
well
came out in
1950s
90.
actually. Yeah,
Yeah, like
1954.
the first one came out in 1954, and the last one of those came in 1975.
So it spans a 20 or so year gap there,
Yeah, there's a
and
20-year gap.
very old. So it's worth pointing out, like go into these with the mindset of they are old movies, right? Like
They are very old.
they are very much products of their time, somewhat too. But I still found them very enjoyable. Even the effects for the time, right, were still fun and enjoyable to watch. Like I loved how the movies would use these tiny sets, right? And like basically toys for a lot of the
I
stuff
think
that they
it's
would
no
destroy.
mystery these days that all of these monsters are a guy in a rubber suit.
Oh yeah, that too. But like I love the hey, let's build these tiny sets for dude in rubber suit to go around smashing and destroying to make it look like he's very big and giant and all that, right?
Yeah, and also with the with the camera angles and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the other effects, they do. There is actually a lot of effort in
Oh
putting
yeah.
into making this guy seem large and actually and badass and everything.
Like yeah, there's a ton of like props to the editors, right? Like they did a ton of work to like you said, make him seem large and very big and badass and all of that, right? And they even put a lot of work into making the final big reveal like really worthwhile. Like the first movie really built it up extremely well, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Even for
Yeah,
something that's just in a
this is
rubber
something
suit with
that.
very basic effects, they still build it up. They still take a lot of time to build it up and all that, which is really nice.
This is actually, I will say something I'll say right now regarding this entire era, maybe even the franchise. The first one is the best one. Let's not, no matter what we
I
say,
agree.
it is the best
Well,
one out of the bunch.
I don't know about that. It's definitely the best one, like build up and reveal wise and everything. Like hands down, I agree with you there. But in terms of story, what had me going? What had me more interested in this? This isn't necessarily a good type of interested, but what had me more interested is some of the later films that I watched. Right?
Okay, this is actually something I want to say about the entire era before we get into specific movies. This is a very experimental era for Godzilla because
That
people these
explains a
days.
lot.
Mhm. Because you have the first movie, which is very serious and very dark, and you can tell that this was made by people who experienced the atom bomb firsthand,
Yeah, that too.
and this
Yeah.
was how they saw it.
Hmm.
Godzilla was created from nuclear blast, and was how the people of Japan saw that threat. So you can tell that they actually treated it like a disaster. It's not just a monster that goes around, looks fake, and destroys things. No, no, no. This is a serious matter, and there's. I'm not. Have you seen the Japanese version or the English one?
So for most of these, I watched the English version, the Americanized edits.
Mhm.
Which
So
again,
there's
like even that still has it plays it down more from what I understand. Like the first movie,
yeah,
right? Like looking
there
at
are
that,
some cuts.
it plays down the hey, threat of nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons bad deal. Like it plays that down a lot more, but it is still there, and it's still pretty obvious that this is bad. This is made from, this is made within a culture that was hit with an atomic bomb and had that devastation happen to them, right? And this is their kind of perception of it and how they go about sharing that and saying, hey, this shit sucks, yo.
One
We
way
should
to put
know.
it.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, they should know. Like, again, like you said, like, this is 1954, so this wasn't very long after World War II and the atomic bomb.
Yeah, so this was after. This was inspired by the atom bomb.
Yeah. But, I mean, I I enjoyed them, and but coming into it, right, I came into that first movie and it was that somewhat more serious take, right? So when you get into the later movies in this era, it kind of threw me for a loop when we get to certain movies specifically that I watched, right?
Mhm.
And it threw me for a loop when all of a sudden there's these other story elements that are involved. It's like not what I expected when you started off with this kind of more serious, more somber take, right? And all of a sudden it's kind of, you know, uh, spoilers, I guess, like, hey, here's two tiny girls. They're called the Cosmos. They protect the world. I'm like, "Do
Yeah,
what?"
you are
They're
good.
like, roll that back a minute. Do what? Say again? You're the Cosmos. Okay. I sure. Why not?
So,
And ladies
on
and
that
gentlemen,
note, like I
that's
said,
not the strangest thing these movies do.
well, there is a giant monster breathing fire going around destroying Tokyo.
That's
I'm
normal.
pretty sure.
That's normal. That's understandable. Tiny girls that are called the Cosmos.
So you have a favorite monster from?
I mean, can I be vanilla basic bitch and say Godzilla?
Well, no, I mean other than Godzilla,
Other
because
than
Godzilla is
Godzilla.
of course the
Um, Kong was kind of fun, but
well,
I think my favorite one would probably have to be uh Rodan. We only see him
hmm.
once, but I think he would kind of be my favorite because I
Yeah,
just
he's like Godzilla's friendly rival, kind of sorta. And
I just kind of love the way where in like Rodan appears up at least in the movies I watched, right? He appears up in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. That's when the first time you see Rodan in these movies,
yeah,
and I love
in the
how
same movie with Godzilla too. The
yeah
previously to this, he was in his own movie.
yeah, but I love how you know, you have Rodan show up, and we'll talk a bit more about that movie specifically because I have some thoughts. But you have Rodan show up, and then they just show Godzilla walking along, doing his thing, and all of a sudden Rodan just flies by and just drives by, kicks Godzilla or whatever, and knocks him over. And I'm like, I like this dude. He's a jackass. But speaking of, almost all of these monsters are little shits sometimes. like like the first
Well,
movie.
they are monsters, Wolf. What do you
No,
expect?
no,
Diplomats?
but I mean, the first movie, right? They show like Godzilla walking by a bridge after destroying Tokyo, and he's like, you know what? He turns around, like he walks off by the bridge, going back into the ocean. But instead of finishing his walk and going into the ocean and being gone, he turns around just to come back and say, "This bridge, fuck your bridge," and then throws the bridge, and then picks the bridge up and throws it in the ocean. It's like, damn, Godzilla, you a dick.
Again, what did you expect? But,
I mean, he had already, but I mean, again, like he had walked by the bridge and just came back just to destroy that one bridge. Like that one bridge had it coming. I'm like, that's hilarious, but why?
you know. Okay, fair point.
But
Fair
again,
point.
like I do kind of like that, even though these are people just wearing suits, like they do, and as the movies go on, you see them add more and more like personality to the monsters, really, kind of to all of them, really. Like they have this kind of
Yeah.
personality to them, especially Godzilla, especially Kong as well, and Mothra too. Gets some personality added. And like again, all even Rodan, like all of them have personality added to them in the way they act and move and stuff
Actually,
like that, which is really nice.
in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, there's a point where Mothra attempts to stop a fight between Godzilla and Rodan, and she sprays Godzilla with with the thing,
Yeah, with
and
the soap
Rodan
web.
laughs. But then when Rodan gets it, Godzilla gets the laugh,
Yep,
and it's like,
that was another one. And it's
uh,
stuff like that that just adds to it. It's just nice.
yeah,
So I mean, props
but
to
it
them.
is. But like I said, it is kind of experimental that you have the first movie where you see little girls like singing in choir and people badly injured in hospital bed, and it's like, and then you jump 4 movies ahead, and it's like you see the fairies and the monster talk and stuff, and it's like, is this the same series anymore?
Yeah, it's very inconsistent, but it's kind of like you say, it's their experimental phase. Like they have, this is the first start of the series, so they kind of have everything to explore and experiment with, and just kind of tinker with and see what works and what doesn't. So I kind of enjoyed that about it. It's very after you kind of like, okay, we're into this now, and it's just like once you wrap your head around that, it's just kind of you're along for the ride, and it's a pretty enjoyable and fun ride. Like it's looking back at it now, it's sure it's dated and the effects and everything are dated, but it's a fun sort of dated, right? Like they're very fun movies to experience now.
Yeah, like actually one of my favorites in this era. I know a lot of people don't really like that one, but I think it's adorable. And Son of Godzilla. Like, come on. the the fact this creature has a son that looks like this is
That movie
amazing
was
in an
dumb. That movie was dumb, but I actually enjoyed
it's so dumb, but at the same time you have this final scene in the snow where Godzilla actually gets some character development that at first it doesn't even care about the sun, and then at the end he's like actually helping him out and stuff, and you see that he actually does care. It's actually kind of charming. It's dumb as hell, but it's charming as all hell as well.
It's very dumb, but as you say, it's also very enjoyable, and I kind of like that about it.
Okay, but I don't mind. We can keep jumping around. But the one thing I will say about the original is
Mhm.
that you saw the English version,
Yes.
and you may have noticed that one of the guys was speaking English, and it actually matched his lips.
Yeah, because that was I found out through looking up and doing a bit of research. Some stuff was added into the American edits. I know for like the
Yeah.
first 2 or 3 movies, like they didn't
Yeah,
just take
I'm,
away; they
I'm
also
not
added
sure about
in.
the entire number. I'm not sure how, in what movies it was, but in the first one, I know that they cast actor Raymond Burr to play
Hmm.
a general. But the funny thing about this, which I want to bring up, is that they kind of use him as a censorship. Like he's basically commenting on stuff that's happening off screen,
Hmm.
and those scenes I think are in the Japanese version, if I recall correctly.
Well, I mean, I think it kind of works though, right? Because like you have you have the original footage in the background. You just have like for the first movie, right? Like for the first Godzilla movie, right? The very first one, you
Yeah.
have your reporter character who's speaking very fluent English because he is an English person, right? He because he is an American. He I kind of I understand why they did it because there's no way that movie could have come to the U.S. and worked as well as it did without that, right? More than
Yeah,
likely, not at that time. So the fact that they add him in and like, hey, here's all the Japanese footage from the original movie. We're just playing it in the background while you listen to this character talk over it. Today, nowadays, that would probably fail wholeheartedly. But back then,
yeah.
you
Back
had the
then,
no one knew better, so you could experiment and do weird stuff like that. But I mean, again, it kind
exactly.
of works and it's kind of enjoyable to watch.
Hmm.
And I kind of like
So,
how they still use a lot of the original Japanese, because you are in Japan, so they just have those characters talking and they're in their native language, and they don't bother to
mhm.
put voices over them. Some of the later movies they bother to put voices over everyone, and it's a little bit jarring, but it's also kind of funny when some of them either overact or underact. Again, it's just enjoyable little quirks of the time, right? And how dubbing and stuff like that just wasn't a big thing back then, and it was very much in its infancy.
Indeed. But the thing I want to bring up with Raymond Burr's character is that did you get his name?
For the first movie, crap, I remember it, but what was it? It was
Because his name is Steve Martin.
yeah, Steve Martin. Yeah.
And this is one of those jokes everyone makes that at the time Steve Martin the actor wasn't around, and and it's
Oh, I see.
yeah, and spoiler alert for the first movie of the next era, he is back in the American version, but because Steve Martin, the actor, was popular at the time, they just refer to him as Mr. Martin so that they won't have to confuse people.
They should have played that up more. That's what I would have done.
Mhm.
Screw it, confuse people.
Yeah, but so this is fun. Actually, before, do you know how they made Godzilla's roar?
No, but I do know it's extremely iconic. It
Mhm.
probably is some
Well,
weird
obviously.
thing they did.
Basically, they took a leather glove and rubbed it against a string instrument. I think a guitar, but I'm not sure.
Hmm, neat.
Mhm. But yeah, just look at how something so simple that they made. Okay, let's make this thing roll like something we don't know. Like they didn't take a tiger's roll or something else. No, no, no. You know, they actually thought of something original, and now it's one of the most iconic movie sounds of all time.
Hmm.
So they killed Godzilla in the first movie, and then he came back in a sequel.
Yeah. So from what I understand, I was unfortunately not able to watch Godzilla Raids again because these movies are hard to find, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Even like on streaming sites and even sites where you can like
Did
download
you
stuff.
find the American version of it?
I didn't find either.
Okay, because apparently in America, when they brought this movie to theaters, they called it they call it Gigantis the Fire
Yeah, I
Monster.
saw that and I tried looking for that. Could not find it. Amazon, Netflix, and a few other
This is still
places,
one of the
and like just some
weirdest.
selling the high seas places. Your har, your har. Couldn't find it. Could not find it.
Yeah, but
Now I'm sure
that
it's out there, but I want to not go to very very sketchy sites to try and find something.
Yeah, so I won't tell you about Godzilla Raids again. It's one of those sequels that it's good, it's fine for what it is, but when you compare it to the original, it's not as good. Like I said, experimental era, and this was the first time they had Godzilla fighting another monster, so they had to really slim down the suit
You know,
that the
uh,
actors were wearing, and you can kind of tell that at some point that these are people in suits and not giant monsters. Like
eh,
honestly, in the first one, you can probably tell some of the fake effects by this point because this movie is 66 years old now.
I mean,
But
it still looks good though. To be honest, like some of the
yeah,
effects are still fun. Like yeah, you again, like I said, right? Like you can very clearly tell in some of these old movies that this is like a little tiny set. Like they made like a little tiny house for him to destroy. That way he looks bigger set against it, right? Or these are like little toy tanks running forward, and they're just adding a flash onto the in editing, right, for the cannon shots and stuff like that. Like you can tell, but it's still kind of fun,
yeah.
right?
hmm
And it's enjoyable to watch.
So
I want to point out, for the first movie, right? I love the fact that their, scientist guy that they introduced near, like, in the middle of it is just randomly wearing an eye patch for no reason. It's just like, I'm a scientist. I'm wearing an eye patch.
yeah,
You'll
remember
probably
when I
think
said
I'm
that this is
evil,
the
but
serious
I'm not
one of
evil.
the movies?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is one of those. It is the most serious one, but at the same time, how can you take this guy seriously?
But I
This
just
is some
love
of
that
those
though.
stuff that
It's just
aged.
like that's just I don't know, to me, right? Coming from I've watched a lot of anime, that feels just like that's Japan. Like they're just gonna do that. Random scientist wearing an iPad. Sure. That's just expected. Like I would be less surprised if it wasn't something weird. you
Yeah.
know? Like I'd be less surprised if there wasn't some weird hairdo or some weird eye patch or other weird gimmick with the scientist guy. And he's not even evil. It's just eye patch. But I'm a good guy. Like Godzilla's the evil one in this one.
Yep. So, with that said, Godzilla Raids Again. So it's a fine sequel,
Mm-hmm.
and but you can tell definitely it's not as good as the original. Sequel syndrome, I guess.
Mm. Well, I suppose that's probably why you didn't get another film in quite a few years.
Yeah, kinda. Because yeah, there was a 7 year gap between this one and the next one, which was the big crossover of ever Godzilla versus King Kong versus Godzilla. Godzilla versus
Mm-hmm.
Kong is the new one that's coming out.
Mm.
This one you did,
Yes, this one I actually really like this one. Like this one's a lot of
yeah.
fun.
It's
It's
it's one of the it's one of the best ones according to a lot of people, and I
this
will.
is this is where it starts to get a bit silly, right? Because like
Yeah, this like come on. There's a point in this movie where Godzilla takes a tree and shoves it down Godzilla's throat.
yeah, where King Kong does that, and you also have again Godzilla being just a little shit again, and like oh god, Kong, I knocked Kong out. Let me kick some
Godzilla
rocks
is
on
a
top of him.
bully. Godzilla is a freaking bully in
But I
this movie.
I kind of love that about him though.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, he is very much a bully. It's like, hey, King Kong, Kong is knocked out. Let me just kick some rocks on him and bury him and everything, and just hit him with my tail a couple of times. Like, damn, Godzilla, again, you a dick, but I kind of like you. You're a lovable
Yeah,
dick. But yeah, I really enjoyed the silliness of this of this one. I love the fact that you have them. Oh, we found these berries on this island that apparently help to cure all these different diseases, right? But unfortunately, the natives who live on the island won't give us a lot of them because they give them to King Kong, and he's their god apparently. And so it's like, hey, owner of this pharmaceutical company that's working on the berries says our pharmaceutical company needs better ratings for reasons. So go out there and capture this god and bring him back to me because he could be a monster that could help us sell our stuff for reasons. Okay. I kind of love the, human characters in some of these because you can kind of
Yeah.
tell, right? Most of the time the human stories, right, are kind of backdrop to the big monsters and their big battle, but sometimes they're very silly and very enjoyable, and this is one of those films where they kind of upped the silliness factor a bit on some of these characters because what was one I love one scene where they're following King Kong, right? And you have everyone like in a car and everyone jumps out of the car and like jumps onto the side of the road
I know what you're talking about.
to watch Kong and Godzilla get ready to battle, and like my money's on Kong, and he's like, right, I'll flip you, and he flips a coin, heads Kong, tails, Godzilla, and he flips the coin, and like, damn, it's tails. Godzilla's gonna lose. All right, Kong's gonna lose. And it's like, all right. Again, it's just stuff like that, or you have what was it? Oh yeah, you have them bringing Kong back because they managed to capture him, right? You have them bringing Kong back, and the owner of the pharmaceutical company shows up and just kind of jumps off of a helicopter onto the boat, like, "Great, you brought me Kong." And he goes back there to look at Kong, and he, puts his hand on top of, a detonator, and they're like, "Oh no 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 no!" And they kind of tell him like, "That's the detonator. If you bash that down, you're gonna blow up the raft that Kong is floating on." He's like, "Eee." And then he almost does it again, and he almost puts his hand back on there a second time and stops himself. It's just stuff like that. It's goofy and weird, but also very
Again,
funny.
it's goofy, but it's good goofy. You
Oh
can
yeah,
tell that
yeah.
it's not unintentional. The people behind the movie wants you to have fun,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
like, yeah. It's very much a fun thing. Like also, there's a giant octopus for reasons.
yeah.
God, I hated that thing. That thing was just like they used they used footage of an actual octopus, and it's just like those things are cool, but at the same time they're creepy. And it's just like,
um,
ugh.
the one thing a few interesting things about this one. One, you may have noticed that King Kong gets stronger when he gets hit by lightning.
Yeah, which is a little weird.
Origin- Originally, this was supposed to be Godzilla versus Frankenstein,
Huh?
which explains this.
Weird. I,
Yeah, so
actually, that's another thing, right? Like the Americanized version, right, has these newsrooms thing for the United Nations, right? Like that's how they kind of
yeah,
connect all the different scenes together. And I like how also, you have the US just traveling around in this nuclear submarine in this ice field for some weird reason, and it's like they're the ones that end up freeing Godzilla because they run into the ice, the not icicle, iceberg that Godzilla
yeah,
is trapped in. That's the word.
yeah. That's actually kind of a cool thing that this is a continuity thing from Godzilla Raids Again. The movie
Mm-hmm.
ends with the army, burying him under the snow and putting him in
Yeah.
hibernation. So
Yep.
this is actually one of the very few continuity examples in the
They do
movie.
this a few times from what I've noticed, but it's not like very much so, right? Don't go into these movies thinking, oh, each one is connected. It ain't.
Yeah, it
It
ain't.
ain't. But, something,
Maybe you can argue Godzilla's character development from a bad guy to a hero, kind of, sorta,
maybe.
but
Again, there's definitely stuff they carry over, but nothing really majorly connects it, other than a couple movies here and there that build off of one another. But, another thing though, was just how on these newscasts, right, they bring, for the American edit, they bring on this like, scientist, and he says, well, we know for a fact that King Kong gets stronger when he's, introduced to electricity and stuff like that. I'm like, do we? And everyone just like, yes, you're absolutely right, doctor. Like, is he? What?
yes. This is so
Explain.
good. This is so good because I remember again I went into this movie, knowing the story behind the scenes because I
Ah,
watched James Grove's review where he brings mention to it.
ah.
But then I saw this and it's like, well, that's one way to explain to newcomers that Kong gets stronger with lightning,
I
which
mean,
is not a thing
it's just
Kong
out of
usually
nowhere.
does.
It's just out of nowhere. Again, like if you go into that movie with, okay, I understand King Kong. Like I know who King Kong is from other films. So I go into that movie thinking of that King Kong, and it's all of a sudden this King Kong gets stronger from lightning. I'm like, everyone just agrees with this scientist dude who just randomly decided to state this out of
Yeah.
nowhere, so he must be
Didn't
right.
you, didn't you know lightning hits Carolina like a bitch? Like,
Yeah, apparently so.
but the other interesting, not really behind the scene, kind of an urban legend about this movie is that spoilers, Kong wins in the end.
Yeah, I think right. Well, no, that's supposed to be like a myth, isn't it? Because I looked it up a bit. In the American version, Kong wins, quote unquote wins, but in the um Japanese edit, it's supposed to be this thing of like, oh, you hear both Godzilla and Kong's roar at the end of it, and Godzilla's not
Yeah,
actually
no, no, no. So
dead, quote unquote.
the urban legend is that Godzilla in both versions. Like in both versions, Kong is the one that goes up, goes above water, like he is presented as the winner.
Hmm.
What happens is that in the American version, you only hear Kong wins as you see the end.
Yeah.
In the Japanese version, you hear both monsters win, roar. So
Mm.
the thing is that for the longest time in Japan, as I said, that in Japan there's a different ending where Godzilla is the one that goes above water, that Godzilla wins. And this was an urban legend for so long, for so many years until the internet was invented, and we got clarifications that it's not true.
Ah.
But in both versions, Kong is the supposed winner.
I mean, it kind of works though, right? Because again, like nothing's really super connected, but you you can see how like even in the next one, right? Like I think it's Godzilla versus Mothra. Like the way they bring Godzilla back, it's not this. It's kind of like he comes back out of the water because he was hibernating under the water or something like that.
Actually, in Godzilla vs. Mothra, he actually makes an appearance from the ground.
Oh, the ground. Okay, so we're gonna have to talk about something. The Godzilla versus Mothra. I watched it again. It had the little girl. Again, moving on to that movie if you want to, right?
Yeah, the little fairies are a Mothra thing.
Yeah, that's a Mothra thing. I knew that. And they come out from behind this flower saying, "We're the cosmos." I'm like, "Do hey? Do what?" Because
Wait, I love how I'm not sure if you actually binge these two, but like imagine walking out of here and King Kong gets affected, gets stronger from lightning is a scientific fact, and then you meet the cosmos. It's like okay, I'm done. Too much.
I did kind of binge them, but again, it's very like they don't cut it no slack either. It's not even 15 minutes in. We're the cosmos, and everyone just like, okay, you're the cosmos. You protect the world, and you apparently watch over this giant Mothra egg. I and everyone and all the human characters there are just like, yeah, sure, this is normal. Is it? Okay, I guess it is. But
Yeah.
the Mothra movie I watched, did I'm not completely sure if I watched the right one because there's 30 of these freaking things.
Yeah,
Batra's not
Godzilla
in.
vs. Mothra has actually been not really remade, but there is a Godzilla vs. Mothra in the second
I think I
series.
watched the wrong one looking at the list you gave because reading it, uh, I don't see no mention of Batra here.
Nope,
No,
no,
I didn't
no,
watch the
you
right one.
skipped a generation, dude. And not only that, I can just see your face that the the suit quality became like tons
Yeah,
better. The effects are
I
like
kind of watched it and I was beginning to wonder, right? There's jets in this one. Looking back, they don't make a lot of sense looking at the dates on these now.
That's so good.
I kind of thought maybe, again, seeing the list now and seeing the dates, that don't make a lot of sense. I remember Jets being in that one. That's probably not the right one. Oh, well, I mean, I still enjoyed it and had fun. It's still
So this is probably why you didn't realize that Godzilla rises from the ground in that one, because you
Yeah,
saw the wrong movie.
yeah. But I mean, again, I still kind of enjoyed it. It still makes sense. It still kind of works with everything else. It's just everything's kind of newer. But I mean, it still kind of
Yeah,
works with what I
like
saw. It's not much
yeah.
different reading the plot.
Okay. No, it's not really that different. Like the only major thing that the later one does is, like you said, there's Batra, which is basically an evil Matra.
Hmm.
But other than that, and there's the entire thing with, that in the original, I don't think this happens in the new one, that, Matra's egg hatches and there are two offsprings that take
Yeah,
on Godzilla.
that didn't happen.
Yeah, so this is part of the original. And one of the things that the original does is that this is the one movie that really establishes how much of an indestructible force Godzilla is, because
Hmm.
this is the one where like the army tries everything at him and nothing even
Yeah.
phases.
Yeah, they
That's
did that in
great.
the one I watched too. Like, it's just everything. Even they throw a bunch of stuff at Mothra too, and barely anything
Mhm.
phases Mothra either.
Yeah. But fun fact about Godzilla versus Mothra, the original, that apparently at some point in English it was called Godzilla versus the Thing.
Yeah. And that's
Which,
my problem, right? Because the movie I watched, right, the version I watched said this is Godzilla versus Thing. I'm like, all right, that's the right one. And no, it wasn't apparently. Whoever listed that
and this,
failed
and this is the
miserably.
funny thing that I think Godzilla versus the Thing kind of hints on the kind of like predicted that there's going to be a comic where the Avengers take on Godzilla.
Really?
Yeah, there is a
All right.
comic like that.
Fair enough.
I mean, there's a comic where Godzilla plays basketball with an all-star. I
This
forgot
is true.
who
That I
exactly.
do know of. That I do know of. So yeah, again, like Godzilla is just everywhere and does everything. It's whatever.
I like how Godzilla is everywhere, does everything. Like, I'm still waiting for my Godzilla and Attack on Titan crossover.
Yeah. One day, maybe.
One.
But yeah, I mean, even the
So,
version I watched, it was still enjoyable. It was still fun, and it kind of still gives the same idea of Mothra versus Godzilla. But what I do know is this is the more or less last film where Godzilla is the quote unquote villain.
yeah, starting with the next one, he starts from turning from a villain to like anti-hero-ish to outright hero by the
Hmm.
end. So yeah, but Ghidra, the three-headed monster, and just I know that there are a lot of ways to pronounce that name. This movie says Ghidorah, some movies say Ghidorah, and lately they seem to be settled on Ghidorah, which is how I'm going to call him.
I like Ghidorah better, but that's just me, personal preference. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. And this is
Yeah.
another one of those films where you come into it and it's like, all right, we're gonna jump the shark very quickly. You know, here's a princess and she's, there's a political plot out to assassinate her. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
fairly normal stuff, fairly easy.
Fairly normal stuff. In what countries do you live where assassinating a princess
I mean,
is something that
that's
happens?
that's something that happens in the real world, so it's not like unheard of. Like that's normal, all right? What's not normal is when they're in a plane and apparently, her father or her fake father, I guess, I don't know, whatever, is the one who's planning on killing her and then all of a sudden it's like the plane's going to blow up because they planted a plane on the bomb with the princess, but all of a sudden the princess is told, you know, through some vision thing, I guess, I don't know, of jump out of the
Some
plane.
vision thing. Yeah.
And she does. And she lives. She jumps out of a plane high up in the air at speed and lives. No parachute, nothing. All right. And you're told by random scientists, dude, oh, it's perfectly reasonable how she lived. I'm like, I explain. Well, you see, because of the explosion, she fell into a pocket dimension. Because the pocket dimensions exist. I'm like, do what? You want to roll that back there? What, you want to try again? The explosion of the plane threw her into a pocket dimension, and that's how she lived from the crash, from the fall. And then it just goes on past that. Moving on. Okay, then that's what we're doing now, I guess. She fell into a pocket dimension, and that's how she lived. Moving on. New thing, next thing. I'm like, okay. All right. And then we find out that, the little girls who are, this calls them the Shibojin, or what is it? What does it call them? I knew them as the Cosmos, but apparently, they're called like the Shibojin or something like that. But again,
Well, I'm just sitting here listening to you because we have more urgent things to talk about with this movie than this.
yeah, the Shobinjin, I think that's what it's called. But I mean, again, it's it's just I love kind of the human element and the human story to this because there's some weird fucking people in this world, and it's just out of nowhere, and I just kind of love that part of it. It's like I'm really interested in watching them because they fucking weird. Really fucking weird. Like I love how, those two little girls from before are now a part of this, hey, they're a part of this national TV show that's, airing now, and they just came on there to be as guests apparently, and some random little kid wants them to call Mothra because he wants to see Mothra because he likes Mothra. All right, cool. And I
By the
also,
way, one of the babies went lost apparently because we only have one
yeah, there's supposed to be
Mothra.
two from what I understand, so now there's only one. So it's like, what happened to the other one? Who knows? We ain't gonna try and find that out or do anything about. Nah. All
Mm.
right. And I also kind of love how you then have Princess, who's now lost her memory apparently, and now thinks, but she actually is a Martian from insert Mars or Venus here, and she's like going around being a prophetess because she has the ability to see into the future because of her alien race because they could do that. Don't ignore that. Don't bother to explain that. Just she knows, so she's gonna go around warning people and like she goes around warns people like, oh, this mountain you're at, like there's a monster here. You need to get away now. And it's like, all right. And then monster appears, and I love how some random dude says it's Rodan. What the fuck you mean it's Rodan? Like you know who he is? It's the first time I've seen him. What the fuck you mean? You over here acting like, oh, we've seen Rodan. He's been here the entire time. The fuck he is? Who is he? Explain shit, please.
Well, I should
I
have told
kind
you
of, that's probably the one thing I would put against these movies is that they're very
not beginner friendly.
interdependent on, they're not very beginner friendly. They're kind of interdependent. Like if you want to have some form of knowledge, right, you kind of have to watch like, oh, well, you need to watch the Rodan movie, right? Like there's a Rodan movie? Yeah, you should
Yeah,
watch that one. Then you can watch this movie. And it's like, I didn't know. But again, it's still,
and
I guess it kind of speaks to the movies that it kind of works though. Even if you've not seen the Rodan movie, it still kind of works in this movie because it's just like monsters exist. All right,
all right, cool.
it's just one of them things. And again, it kind of just adds to the charm of it, I suppose you could say.
So,
But I've been talking a lot. What do you have to say about Ghidorah, the three-headed
yeah,
monster?
so Ghidorah is probably, not probably, he is Godzilla's arch nemesis. He's
Mhm.
basically the Joker to Godzilla's Batman. He he is Godzilla's main bad guy, and I
Hmm.
think this movie makes a good and a good job introducing him
Yeah,
as such. There's a reason he becomes such an icon with Godzilla. There's a reason why they keep bringing him back in every other iteration. He is that good.
yeah.
He's so cool. He's so awesome, and yeah, it is cool to just see him being introduced, and he doesn't even need to do anything. He just flips his wings and buildings
Shoots
go
his
bop
laser
up.
beams, and yeah, he flies around, shoots his laser beams, and that's it.
Yeah.
And he's like
And,
the destroyer of worlds, and it's like, all right, sure, I get this. This is cool. Let's go.
mhm.
And then
And
we get into seeing all the Rodan, Godzilla, and Mothra have to work together and everything.
mhm. Which is
And I
again, this is the first time Godzilla actually has to team up with other monsters in order to
Mhm.
defeat the new threat. So this is also interesting.
Well, it's also worth pointing out that Rodan and Godzilla had no intention to until Mothra went off on its own, right?
Yeah, they don't like each other.
They're busy arguing and saying we want an apology from one another before we do anything. And it's like, God, y'all are children. I love you, and I love how you have the two little girls who are playing the Shobinjin.
Yeah, they're translating the whole thing.
Yeah, they're translating the whole thing, and they say, "Godzilla, what language?" I'm like, "That's dumb, but I kind of love it. That's funny."
Yeah, again, this is where it starts getting dumb, but it's fun dumb.
Yeah, very much so,
So here I
very
told you
much so.
to skip some, to skip some of them, but just to go over them quickly. After Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, there's Invasion of the Astro Monster or Godzilla versus Monster Zero.
Hmm.
But Monster Zero is Ghidorah again.
Yeah.
And the plot of it is that he's causing. Are you ready for this? Hold on to your chair. So Ghidorah is causing troubles on the moon in space,
Uh huh.
and aliens borrow Godzilla and Rodan from the Earth so that they could fight him in space.
Sounds about right for this franchise so far.
Yeah, and then the aliens take control of Godzilla and Rodan's minds and force them to go on a rampage to Japan. And then when they manage to break out of the mind control, they fight each other.
Why? I thought Godzilla was good guy. Why?
Again, he's getting there. He's getting there.
Getting there. All right.
After this, we had Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. I told you to skip this one for a very simple reason. It sucks.
Okay, good to know.
But to talk about this a bit, you know how I told you that in King Kong versus Godzilla it was supposed to be Frankenstein instead of King Kong, and this is where
Hmm.
King Kong gets hit by lightning?
Hmm.
So in this movie, they wanted to put Kong as the main guy, not Godzilla. They wanted to put Kong in it. But
Huh.
then they decided that you know what, Godzilla is more marketable, so let's just put Godzilla. So suddenly Godzilla awakens when lightning hits him.
That's where that came from because they have a later movie where Godzilla is strengthened and
Yeah, it's
regenerated by lightning, and it's like,
yeah,
wait
in
a
Mecha
minute.
in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, you're right.
And it's like, well, hold on a minute. I thought Godzilla was weak to electricity. That's what you said in this movie, and now he's changed. And it's like, that's when I kind of realized very quickly, like, okay, so it's kind of, they're playing around with a lot of stuff. Like, nothing's concrete at this point.
Yeah.
It's
And
all up.
and the weird thing about this about Godzilla versus the Sea Monster is that Godzilla actually falls in love with a human lady, which again feels more like Kong.
Yeah, it
This
does.
movie is weird. This movie is so
This
weird.
franchise is weird from what I've seen.
Yeah, but no, this is like next level weird.
I kind of want to watch this one now. Why'd you tell me to skip this one? I should have watched this one.
Yeah. You can always look it up. I
I
can show.
might again, right? Like, I actually am interested in watching some of the movies you told me to like. Hey, don't bother with these. Just watch these so we can kind of get this out a little bit quicker. I actually am kind of interested in going back and watching some of those movies. I should mention that you had me skip because this franchise is weird. It is a little bit silly. It is very dumb, but in a very fun way. And I kind of would like to see some of those movies I skipped over at some point because they seem like they would be fun and enjoyable on top of everything else I've watched with this so far.
Mhm. Well, I was hoping.
Hmm. But
So,
the next one I watched, which
Son of
is
Godzilla, we kind of talked about it.
even more dumb
Yeah.
and random,
But
but
it's such a good, funny, dumb. Like
oh
I
yeah,
like the scene. I like the scene where there's like a point where the son doesn't want to listen to Godzilla and he just lays on his back and starts going, and Godzilla has this. What the hell did I
yep.
get stuck with this?
And
Also, God, Also, goddamn, Godzilla threatens to freaking hit his son because he can't breathe fire. That's harsh.
Yeah, it's a product of its time. But
Yeah.
it's also I kind of love the derpy praying mantises who get giant all of a sudden, and the giant spider, ugh, but giant spider, but that's a thing. But yeah, again, like it's all this one is very much if you skip this one, you're not really missing anything. But at the same time, I would say watch it because it's very
Like,
much
get
dumb
a few
fun.
friends, watch it, have fun.
Yeah. But if you feel like skipping this one, you're not missing much. There are much better movies in this era, I think, than what this one is. Like the next one you had me watch, Destroy All Monsters.
Yeah, so fun fact about Destroy All Monsters, this was supposed to be the final Godzilla movie
Hmm.
ever.
Well, that changed because apparently Godzilla makes a lot of money.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be like it was supposed to be the final one. Like, and the plot is that you told me this is one you couldn't find, right?
I found it, but I didn't get to watch all of it, unfortunately.
Okay, so the plot is basically that the humans managed to get all of the monsters together on an island, which they call Monster Island. This
Hmm.
is a recurring thing in the franchise. And the thing about this is that actually aliens once again take control of the monsters, and the
Yeah.
monsters go through a rampage through the city. But this is it's kind of like a generic movie until the end, where all the monsters team up against Ghidorah, and they
Hmm.
beat the ever living shit out
Yeah.
of him.
Yeah, this one's very much, this is, it's not completely easy to tell it all the time, right? Like they do have kind of through lines and some stories going on here and there within the movies, right? But you kind of get that sense for some of the movies that, oh, this is kind of just backdrop to the big monster fight. This one, I think, from what I saw, has that the most of all this story stuff. If you skipped it, you're not missing much. You're mostly here for the big monster fight, right? Like that one has that feeling the most, I think. Or Destroy All Monsters
Yeah,
does.
kinda.
But I mean, it
Especially
it,
when,
it still works.
especially again, if you, I'm sure that people did when this came out, people did go with this as the final one because this is
Yeah.
what Toho kind of wanted to give out the impression.
Hmm.
But and yeah, this suffers the most from the entire get to the point.
Yeah. But I mean, it's
But
still.
then again, when they do get to the point, it is a great
Oh
fight
yeah.
scene.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. Like that much I did get to see, and it's extremely fun to watch. Just all of them doing their thing and just going at it and having fun and just being badass, awesome monsters. Like it's enjoyable. It's fun.
I think the one I like the most is that Godzilla's son, breeds a puff ring that
Yep.
strangles Ghidorah. Like, why? Okay, that works.
It's one of those things of why are you here again?
Well,
How do you pronounce
I
his
guess
name?
continuity with the previous movie.
Because Godzilla's son's name is like it reads out as Minililla or
Uh,
Minia, but how the hell do you
People
pronounce
refer
that?
to him as either Minia or Manila.
Manila. What a dumb name. What a dumb name. I'm sorry, Godzilla fans. That's a
Well,
dumb name.
honestly, look at
Minia's
his face.
okay,
It's
but
dumb.
Manila. Manila. Like, what about Mini Lilla? I don't know. Just something better than Manila. It's dumb. I'm sorry, Godzilla fans. I'm calling you dumb. You're dumb. You make dumb names. Fight me.
I'm sure Godzilla didn't give him that name, but sure.
Not Godzilla. Godzilla fans.
Mhm.
I'm calling the fandom
Uh,
dumb.
well, I think it's the creators give him that name. I'm not sure how this
I'm gonna
came to
call
be.
them dumb
Whatever.
too.
Because in the movie it doesn't have a name, but
I'm gonna call the creators dumb too.
mhm.
It's a dumb name. I'm
Someone
sorry.
is dumb. That's your point. And I'll tell you who's dumb. The person who decided that you know what, let's make more movies after this, and moreover, let's make them for little kids. Because the next movie after this, Godzilla's Revenge, is the worst of the bunch. Like not even from this era alone. Entirely worst Godzilla movie, unless you count Zilla. You didn't see this one because I
Yeah,
have
you tell me
some
to
respect.
you told me these are the other movies you told me to skip. You told me to skip All Monsters Attack or Godzilla's Revenge, Godzilla versus Hydra, Godzilla versus Gigan, and Godzilla versus
Gigan.
Megalon. Gigan.
Okay. Out of those four, Megalon is the best one, and
Okay.
even then, it has some fuck ups.
I mean, again, reading some of the plot for these, which I at least did that much, they're still silly enough. I might be willing to go back and watch some.
Actually, if you want, I'll recommend Godzilla versus Hedorah. If
Mhm.
you get a couple of friends with a few beers, you're gonna have a ball with this one.
Oh, I'm sure that could be done with almost all of these movies.
No, this one. Godzilla flies in that one.
Oh, that's that one you told me about. I need to watch that one then. So for reference for the audience, for so they'll understand the story. You got HC talked to me about some of these movies and everything, and he said, well, in one of them, Godzilla flies. I'm like, I guess with wings, right? He's like, oh, no, you mistake it. Not with wings. He uses his breath, his flame attack to fly around. I'm like, oh, okay.
Actually, something funny I found out in the American DVD for Godzilla vs.
Oh
Hedorah,
no.
you can choose. You know how in DVD you can choose chapters like where you want to start the movie.
Yeah.
So the chapter name for this part where Godzilla flies is something you don't see every day.
Fair enough. Fair
I
enough.
mean, they're not wrong.
They're not wrong at all. That's
Yeah.
completely fair.
Yeah, so Godzilla's Revenge is awful. To give you a basic summary, there's a kid who's being bullied in school, and then he gets kidnapped by evil agents. And when he's kidnapped, he thinks he's on Monster Island playing with Godzilla's son. And then through the game, he gets courage to escape and then fight the bullies.
Yeah, it's basically like a hey, have courage and have strength and stand up to your bullies movie. That's more or less what it is. Like stand up to your bullies, which is
Yeah.
it's nice for little kids, right?
It's a nice message, but even that's a bit ridiculous. Like Godzilla is the franchise to teach that message with.
Yeah, considering Godzilla is kind of a bully at times.
So Godzilla vs. Hedorah is hilarious for the sake of Godzilla is basically fighting a huge shit. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And Godzilla vs. Gigan, oh boy! And like Gigan is actually a cool enemy for Godzilla, but the movie itself, oh my god. Godzilla vs. Megalon. Here's a fun fact about this one. This was one of the Godzilla movies that was released periodically in the US.
Hmm.
You want to know what the poster for this one was?
Oh no.
It was Godzilla and this Megalon monster fighting on top of the World Trade Center.
Oh, I remember that. I've seen pictures of that. Yeah, it's
Okay,
very silly.
let me tell you one thing. One, as you know, both monsters are bigger than the buildings. And two, no scene in this movie takes place in the US.
Yeah.
Who was drunk enough to come up with this stuff? I have no idea, but this is one of those. It's so fun. It's so silly that it's funny.
Yeah.
It has one of Godzilla's best attacks where he actually slides on his tail to kick Megalon. I'll have to send you that clip afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that this movie is famous for is that it introduces Jet Jaguar, a robot that can grow into kaiju size, and him and Godzilla team up against Megalon and Gigan. And Jet Jaguar.
Okay.
So you know what? I just need to send you a picture of him so that you will know what we're dealing with. Godzilla fans may know this. So I'm down in the picture as we speak. But the thing is that the
Well, I
thing
can
that
look
I'm
it up.
about,
I've already looked it up. I'm looking at it now. That's quite the image. Quite the character.
so according to Germany, okay, according to Germany, This is King Kong in a robot suit.
What?
I have no idea.
Why?
I guess they were pissed off that King Kong took Frankenstein's place in Godzilla vs. King Kong, so revenge?
But why? But why?
Hi.
I that I, I guess that's my response to most of the Godzilla early Showa era franchise. But why?
For the record, I talked to some of my German friends about this. They have no idea what the German translators were smoking at the time, so this will remain a mystery.
Right, that's my response. But why?
And we're moving on to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. This is a special one because this was made to celebrate Godzilla's 20th anniversary at the time.
And I
And
think
they
this
decided
might be my favorite one too.
it's a really good one.
Just I love how silly it is. I love how oh, we found some, this strange metal. Let's take it to a scientist and they discover it and kind of talk about it a bit and it kind of goes on from there and they're doing other things, right? And they find this statue inside of this cave that they unearth while doing work on stuff, right? And apparently there's this prophecy now that this cave foretells, right, of this thing of this terrible monster coming to destroy the earth and two monsters have to fight it off and destroy it instead. And we go along and eventually Mechagodzilla appears and that's the first they see the first sign of the prophecy, right? It's this black mountain over top of the clouds and it's just these black clouds that look like a mountain, right? And they kind of go along from there and Mechagodzilla finally appears and he's cool, right? And they kind of play it off like, oh, Mechagodzilla might be, this is Godzilla, this isn't Mechagodzilla, and you can kind of very clearly tell immediately, like, that's Godzilla, huh? Where's the roar at? Because that's a terrible sounding roar. And coming into this, I was like, oh, they changed the roar. That's a bad idea. And then they show very quickly, like, oh, maybe it's not. And then it's
And
just all of a sudden,
but this is
here's,
like a good
Anguirus
idea.
as well, who
I do
gets his
like the
ass kicked.
idea. I do like the idea though that at this point Godzilla is like already a good guy instead of a bad guy, and then have a movie
Mm-hmm.
start with him like being a bad guy again and destroying Tokyo. It's like, oh, okay, and then you slowly figure out that because there's actually a battle between Mechagodzilla as Godzilla and Angress from Godzilla Raids Again, and Godzilla like pulls like a King Kong on him with a T Rex and like rips his jaw off, and it's like
Yeah.
Godzilla may
Or
be a
Anguirus.
bully, but this is not. This is even too much for him.
Well, they even
And
say, right, like Anguirus, why would Anguirus ever attack his friend Godzilla? And it's like, huh, okay, so he's as a friend now. I didn't know this. But yeah,
um,
like this is the first movie I saw. I don't know if they started doing it beforehand, but they actually started using blood in some of this one to show
yeah,
like damage on the
actually, the previous
monsters.
in Godzilla vs. Gigan, there's a lot of Godzilla bleeding.
Ah, okay. Well, this is the first one I saw that they started using it in. But I mean, again, it doesn't like take away from it. It kind of adds to it a bit, I suppose, to show damage on the monsters and the suits and stuff like that, which was fun and nice. I mean, poor Anguirus just comes out and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna get this guy. No, I'm not. I'm gonna get my ass handed to me very quickly, and he's just gone for the rest of the movie because he about dies. Like, damn, Anguirus is a bitch. At least maybe he's better in other movies, but in this one, he's kind of just uh not good. Kind
Yeah,
of, one of those, why you here again, yo? He's the
they needed a fight. They needed a fight scene.
Anguirus is the shonen protagonist's friend in this one, more or less. You have the shonen protagonist who's
That's
badass
one
and
way
really strong, and then you have the shonen protagonist's friend who isn't weak, but isn't as strong as the shonen protagonist and kind of gets their butt handed to him quite often. Well, that was Anguirus in this one, at least. But again, like I really enjoyed this one because after that, you have them bring more metal and to the scientist, and he's like, "Oh, this is space titanium." Like, all right, I guess that's a thing we know about in this world. Fair enough. And then it goes on from there, and they see that, oh, here's the real Godzilla, and he's fighting this other Godzilla, and that's actually Mecha Godzilla. It's made out of metal and everything. And this same
Yeah.
scientist dude, without a beat in a later scene, just says, "Well, it's obvious that Mecha Godzilla was made by aliens to destroy humanity and take over the world." I'm like, it's obvious, huh?
Yeah.
You're just gonna
I
drop that out
mean,
of nowhere? And again, everyone around said scientist just goes, "Yes, Doc, you're absolutely right. So what are we gonna do about these aliens, Doc?" I'm like, you just gonna buy this shit? Like, this dude just the biggest leap in logic I could ever explain, and you're just gonna roll with it. Okay, like, here's point A, here's point E. He just skipped B, C, and D for no reason. And we're just gonna roll with it. Like, it's right. I'm like, what? Explain, please.
I mean, they gave
And,
you the best
I mean,
explanation possible.
and the thing is, though, his leap in logic ain't wrong, but still, I would like some sort of realism here. Come on now. I know we have giant monsters, but let's have at least one of the people standing around said Doctor be a little bit skeptic of him and say, "I think you're a little bit out there, Doc. Let's not just jump straight to the aliens idea." Well, damn, Doc was right. Just jump straight to the aliens idea, I guess. I mean, at least have someone be skeptical. Give me some kind of realism here in my giant monster movie with aliens who want to take over the planet, who are apparently monkey people. Which, by the by, if the aliens are, monkey are gorillas, right? Or alien gorillas,
Yeah.
what does that say about King Kong? Is he an alien now? It's just a giant
um,
alien, or what? I have so many questions because of this movie, and none of them are answered in any other movie.
yeah, sorry, this is a question for the ages. I don't think there's.
These movies bring up more questions than they answer. And again, this is the one where you find out, like, oh, Godzilla, no. There was this one where Godzilla's charged by lightning. I'm like, what? Like, he's, what?
Yeah, I explained that bit to you.
I know you did. But yeah, again, it's just, I love how these movies, again, they just have those jumps in logic out of nowhere. And it's just, again, I sound like I'm sitting here complaining about it, but I'm not. I do enjoy it a lot. Like, I feel adds a lot to it because it just kind of adds to that dumb, silly factor that's very fun and enjoyable to watch.
Mhm. But yeah, this also good fight scenes with
Yeah,
Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla is really cool.
absolutely. Like, it's very enjoyable to watch Mechagodzilla and Godzilla go after it, and you kind of see Godzilla get wounded and then come back again, but stronger. And you kind of see all the damage on Godzilla while fighting Mechagodzilla, and then he gets help from this other monster whose name is King Caesar. Which, does that ever come back up again? Probably not. Who knows? It's Godzilla.
Mechagodzilla does come back in the next
No, but
movie.
what about King Caesar though?
King Caesar.
Yeah, King Caesar.
He comes back in one more movie in a later era.
Okay, but yeah, it
By
was
the way,
very
what a
enjoyable.
lazy asshole! You need to sing for him in order for him to get up. Fuck you, dude.
I mean, at the same time, they had to sing for Mothra too, so which was a
Yeah,
little
but
bit jarring in itself too. Kind of getting the random, like, oh, we're in the song bit of the movie now. I'm like, all right,
yeah, and is it in your copy too? In what you watched that they sing the song twice as if they copy pasted the scene?
yeah.
Oh my god, I hated that.
It was a little bit. All right, come on, let's move it along, please. But I mean, again, it's not a bad song by any means. Like, it's, well done
It's
singing.
a fine song, but I don't need this twice in a row.
Yeah,
Thank you, movie.
yeah. But overall, I think, yeah, I would say Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla was probably as far as, kind of silliness and, dumb fun goes. It might have been my favorite in that regard.
Huh? Not a
And
bad
just with,
choice.
good fight scenes, like, I think Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla was probably my favorite out of this era, barring the first one.
So the next one to talk about and the last one of there is Terror of Mechagodzilla, basically
Hmm.
a direct sequel.
Yeah, this is one of the few
Mechagodzilla is
times
back.
where these films are actually interconnected.
Mhm. Yeah, Mechagodzilla is back, and this time, when Godzilla tears off his head, he keeps fighting.
Yeah.
And other than that, there's also another monster which looks really ridiculous called Titanosaurus. And the only interesting thing about him is that Godzilla has to fight two monsters on his own this time. It's not a tag team. So for like a last movie in a series, it is interesting to see him take on two monsters this
Hmm.
time by himself. I guess you have nothing to say.
I mean, yeah, I mean, again, it was a very enjoyable film. Like, I watched most of this one, and I watched all of this one. And then again, like, I can't say too much about the, over the top story because it's just a continuation of the over top story from the first one, right? So,
I do like Godzilla's first appearance in this one that you see like his silhouette in the clouds and then like it like fades to black. He comes
mhm.
and then when it comes back, you see him.
Mhm.
That was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, again, like, again, they do a lot of really enjoyable stuff. And again, like, going back to, I love all of the build up they do in pretty much all these films. Like, there's a good amount of build up before you get the big main fight scenes and all of that, right? And they do it fairly well, in my opinion, for most of them.
Yeah.
Even with the age these films have on them, like the build up is still enjoyable to watch.
And
Like
you
it's
know, there
never
is something about age because
get to the
none of these
point, right?
movies is particularly long when you get into it.
I think the longest
Like,
one I watched was an hour 40 or an hour 50,
yeah,
and that was it.
exactly. They don't go over 2 hours, and think how many movies try to do build up and they go on for so long, and
Hmm.
yet these movies don't do it in such a quick manner that's both effective but not drawn out.
Yeah.
And this is something that because I think actually this Terror of Mechagodzilla came out the same year as Jaws came out. And
Hmm.
ever since Jazz came out, there's kind of this entire oh, you need to wait an hour until you see the monster. And it's like, no, no.
Yeah, I mean, even the original Godzilla, right? Like, you do, like, they build it up, but it's not. You see Godzilla within the first hour. You see with Godzilla within the first, I
Yeah.
think, 30 minutes, at least,
Give or take, yeah.
because that first film's only an hour 20 minutes. At least the American version is. Like the Japanese version might be a bit
The
longer,
Japanese one is longer, from what I remember.
but it's not that much longer from what I understand. Like what they cut isn't that much, especially with the build up, right? Like they didn't really mess with the build up at all. So I mean, it's very they're very to the point in a way, right? Like it's very we know what you're here for, and while we're going to build some of this up and kind of work to it, we're still going to it's not going to take us long to get there. We're going to get there, and you're going to enjoy it. So, and again, like I say, all of these movies have their build up, and all of these movies I do enjoy the build up for. Some of it's a little bit out there, a little bit weird, a little bit dumb, but again, it's all done in a very fun way or an enjoyable way or in a way that you don't feel bored while watching it, right? Or at least I don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. Not all of them are winners,
No,
but the ones that
by
are
no
good are
means.
good.
Yeah, I would agree. Like the ones that, do well, do exceptionally well, and the ones that don't do so well, they're still enjoyable in their own way.
One final thing, to close this off, in Terror of Mechagodzilla, I do like the ending shot where you just see Godzilla return to the sea, which
Hmm.
is kind of supposed to be a goodbye because for a decade this was the last Godzilla movie, and in this era, this is the final Godzilla movie in terms of this continuity. This is where we leave him. And I think it's kind of an appropriate ending to, he came from the sea, so the last time you see him, he goes back to the sea. I
Hmm.
like it.
Yeah, it works out.
Mhm. So, would you say you're excited to carry on the movies?
Yeah, it'd be fun to watch more of these and see where and how it kind of develops over time. Even though technically I've jumped the gun a little bit and watched one of the movies way ahead of time.
Yeah. Although you didn't jump the gun too much because it's part of the next era.
Mhm.
So if anything, you got a bit ahead.
Just
Instead of
one
seven
movie.
movies, you need to watch six now. Yay!
Yay. But I mean, again, like I think looking at that movie, right? Even though I might have got it wrong, I think I'm really going to enjoy the next era a bit more than this one. I think it's still going to
Yeah,
be
a
quite a
lot
bit of
of
fun.
people mostly agree. Like I personally really like the next era, but yeah, we'll talk about this the next time we tackle Godzilla.
Hmm.
But until now, this is it for this episode of the Outcast. We hope you enjoyed. What
That's
are
a
your
different
thoughts?
type of monster.
What is your favorite Godzilla movie from the first era? You can also tell us what is your favorite Godzilla era. You can tell us all about it in the comment section below on our Twitter, which is Bearcast with a capital B, capital C, and our Tumblr, which is Bearcast. So until next time, I was HC.
I was Wolf, and there's a good thought to end with. Toothless versus Godzilla.
I actually drew that.
Oh, I'm
I'll send it to you
behind.
right now.
Darn.
And we'll talk to you all next time. Take care.
Bye bye.